All right. So we're looking at this one's material color scheme, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Megan's sharing. All right. So let's bring up my VS Code. I'm not even sure if it's open yet. Well, oh, it's sitting right in front of me. Hang on, and unfortunately it's on a folder I can't show. There we go. Or at least I shouldn't show. There we go. All right, so let's pull this up. Let's take over the screen, right? And then I need to do my weird little brain going, what am I doing next? Copy. Paste. Oh, wow. That was a weird copy. Copy link. Yeah, I probably don't need an email address, right? No, everybody knows my work email address. You can find that any day.
We're gonna spam you.
Yeah. So, tell me what you did, what you're thinking, what you're concerned about, what you're
Right.
having
So
meltdowns about.
so in the themes.scss, we just put kind of like some basic stuff in there. And then we imported it into styles.scss. And I don't know, like it seems that we've changed the primary, what is it? Primary accent in the Warren color, because we tested it out on one of the components. And for example, where is that? In like the grade level selection,
Mhm.
You know, like the color is defined here as primary. And originally I think it was like indigo color. Well, now it's green because we set the primary color to green. So that's working, but we were kind of wondering, how do we, and we tested a few things out, but
okay,
if we
so
want to, yeah.
Let's go back to some of the basics here, because when I looked at your commits, it looked like on the very first commit you were kind of going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And you guys shifted directions, and I loved seeing the shift. What I also saw though was a lot of what you had when you were going down the wrong path stayed there. Okay. So styles SCSS, I saw a comment in one of your files. Where did the other one, the themes one? You removed these from Angular JSON?
Yeah, I took them out because I found that when I was like looking at how to use our themes, that we had to add the path to the styles.scss in the styles array, I guess, in the angular.json. But I don't know if you know if we can leave. Yeah.
Here's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have the styles in there.
Okay.
And this is in the build. Okay.
Okay.
So the architect has a couple different things, and create a comment thread. Where did that come from? All right. So you have the build and serve and that kind of stuff, right? And tests. And basically, this is the overarching saying this is a global style.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you put into this file should be accessible and usable in any of the SCSS files throughout the project.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So where I think you went down that path the wrong way, and it wasn't a huge shift, is here in the CSS files at the component level, you shouldn't need to import things.
Oh, okay.
That should already be accessible in there.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's the piece that's got you a little bit out of sorts.
Yeah.
What I see here is brilliant. Is probably beyond what I would have done on my first try. Okay. Your indenting is a little wonky, just a little.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's the worst you got, we're doing okay. So little things bug me, and we don't have linting on the CSS files. So things like, I see that this is spaced at 4 characters. And if you click that down there, that spaces, then you get the option of indenting using spaces. I've got my default tab set to 2. Notice how it changes where those lines are. So, this should come all the way back, which means then that all the way up here, this can come back. And, but I mean, that's
yeah.
That doesn't affect functionality. Okay. And sorry, try to save, not select. I'm not sure what's going on my computer. You guys can make sure it saves.
Yeah.
I'll save it. May I ask another question? So the reason we added, for instance, the blue variable is because we couldn't figure out how to target the primary or the accent colors. So when we go to the grade level selection component and we were trying to replace what was primary before with accent, for instance, it wasn't picking it up. And so we tried many different things. And so then I said, well, let's just try like blue with the color blue. And we were able to get that to work. But for some reason, we didn't know how to access like the theme colors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like when the button is clicked and the background changes, that's the thing that we couldn't change for some reason. Yeah, so we were troubleshooting to try and figure out like, we're missing something or.
No, you're right. And accessing those colors is painful. To say the least.
Oh, cool.
Because I was like, I feel like we need to specify a number to target a specific shade, but we weren't sure exactly how to like label it or do that.
Well, here's the thing. Okay. Within the CSS at the component level, and I see how you did this with the background color, and I think that's brilliant. Okay. The selected most likely is not going to come off of the actual theme. Let the theme handle all the buttons, all the traditional stuff. What we need to do, what you're doing is you're defining where the overrides of that theme are.
I see.
So you're on the right track in blue. But maybe this might be better named something like, and I wouldn't put it in here because this is where your theme is.
Okay.
What you would want to do is, and what I would say is either have an override file that gets imported as well, or just put the overrides right in here.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. So then what I would name it is something like, let's say, override selected background color blue, and then you could also have an additional, just so you make sure you have it, override selected foreground color white.
And then instead of like the white and the blue, can we also just pull in shades from the palette as well and assign it to that variable, or?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
But I wouldn't go as far as, like, if you look at the color palette here, trying to get the map palette color shade.
Oh, okay.
Just do the hex value.
You could just grab the hex value.
Oh, okay.
Now, one of the things to look at is this is material. So, this is SCSS. So let's look at SAS for a second. Because this is defining like kind of an arrayish kind of thing.
Yeah.
In SAS. If that's the case, we could bring in color palettes, which I didn't see you bringing in color palettes in this file. Right? So I don't know where this is being used at.
Right. So that's maybe why it wasn't connecting when we were trying different things too.
Yeah,
those were, I don't know. I thought Let's see.
Because the underscore color palettes file is not being brought in that I saw. At one point, you had it in the
where is it?
Angular JSON file. I know that you had it in here in the Angular JSON, but I would nest them within the individual CSS files as imports. Okay, so this file should be imported into the theme. The theme builds based on your map primary color stuff. And I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, those colors I think I pulled from the default Angular material palettes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to use these color palettes themes, first of all, we need to figure out how to identify one of those. Right.
Oh, dang.
Map theme primary, map palette accent. So how do we take the map palettes and use it in the theme, as opposed to the map defaults that you're using from the map core?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we look at, but I want to look at SAS for a second. I'm going to take this off the screen. I'm going to go to the SAS website. I don't want the SAS Meister Playground. I want the actual SAS page. And let's look at their documentation and variables. Let's see what we can do with variables. I just want to see real quick what it gives us as options, because variables can contain almost anything, but what you've got is that open paren and then a list of key value pairs. And I've seen that before, but it's been a long time since I've gone to that level. I mean, day to day, you don't need to use that a lot. So I'm not 100% sure exactly how that comes into play or how to access values inside of it.
Would you recommend using just like the mat core and like using some of those material established colors instead of defining our own color palettes?
Well, I thought the whole exercise was to try and define our own.
Okay, that's what I was just curious about. Okay.
Okay. I think if you could do it with the internal, that we could do that, but I think defining our own is what we want to do. And what I've built in the past is probably radically different than what you guys are doing right now. So let's look at these lists. I think it's a list or a map is what I'm seeing. No, I think you guys are doing good things with this. Okay, so this is something for every element, add to a list. So this is actually list. Immutability, I don't think that's it. Maps. That looks familiar, doesn't it? Right. So when we look at, let's pull this. Oh boy, that doesn't help, does it? Probably about there is about all I'm going to get. And if I close out the Angular JSON, that'll let me reduce this down before I bring it over. So we can see it there. That's a list, right? Or sorry, that's a map. So the question is how do we use a map? How do we reference something in the map? And look at this. Here we go. Debug map get. Font weights is the variable, and you passing it a key. So if you want a specific value here, it would be map.get, map palette primary, comma, 400, and you get this color right here.
Oh, okay. That's kind of what you were.
I tried different things with like the comma, but I didn't have the map.get.
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't know if we need that debug.
Right. Can we just do like define a variable is equal to map.get?
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if you want like the alternate, or if you want the defined background color and you want to pick it that way, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So look, it has a map set as well. Again, I don't know what the debug does. I don't remember seeing that in their documentation. But yeah, that's a map. That's exactly what that is and what you're doing. So you have a series of maps here. And the question is then, how do we take the maps? And you built this thing, it's a map palette. And that the question is, how do we use that map palette out of that color palette?
Okay.
Over here.
Yeah, okay.
Because my guess is the green palette is what you're going to be, green palette, pink palette, red palette are what you're going to be replacing. With a series of palettes, primary, secondary, accent, worn. Here. Although you may only be replacing one, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Does that start to make some sense?
Yeah.
So this is going to have to import color palette. Theme is going to have to be added into styles. And then what I would do is once you get the buttons to go to that new palette, then you just create a bunch of overrides for specific scenarios. And then we have set the pattern so that when we want to do an override, we have to come over here to the styles file, create the override and or use the existing overrides for whatever it is we need it. Okay.
Yeah.
So whenever we're selecting something on a list of buttons, we should know to use these two colors. And you can clearly replace those.
Okay.
Okay. So as you import those, this one's imported by this one one's imported by this one now has access to everything.
Okay.
As it builds, these CSS files should have access to that too, without having to import.
Okay. That makes sense. So then if we
at the top. Sorry.
No, you're good. That's what I was
should
going to
still
ask.
work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, at least that's the way I've used it before. I mean, unless Angular's changed something in the last year that I missed, that's the way it's supposed to work.
Okay.
That global style is accessible to everyone. You might have to wrap this in something like a root.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I don't know for sure, but that's typically how I define variables. Is you'll define a variable within something. By defining that at root, it's available to everything in the application.
Oh, okay, great.
If you define it with a let's say a class style, well, you can only do it within that class style. So let's say you had a navigation wrapper on the left. Well, you can define variables for that nav wrapper specifically.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that enough to move you guys forward? Katie, you
that helps a lot.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the angular.json and kind of going down the wrong path, what we have currently, is that correct? Or does that need to be changed?
Well, I think you brought in a couple pieces.
Right. They're just like not connected or anything like that.
Yeah, styles, themes, and color palette aren't connected upright. That needs corrected upright.
Okay.
Once that's corrected upright, then you'll start to see the style change.
Okay.
Additionally, if we're creating those variable options that we can then use in the other SCSS files, we shouldn't need the import to make that happen. So anywhere you've done that, let's take that out and test it. Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm going to say shouldn't, because weird things happen. Okay.
Right.
And I don't use this kind of a pattern super regular at this point. The style set we have for most of my work projects is pretty well set. And I'll be honest, I end up with something like this that ends up being close to 800 lines long.
Oh, okay.
And then something like this is wrapped in there a couple of times for various theming things that we need.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think you're in the right direction.
Okay.
I'm not 100% now this isn't what I do a lot, so not 100% sure this is going to do, because what you're really looking at is this all component themes that's adding the light theme to it, right? My assumption would be, from what I'm seeing here, and I haven't looked at any of the Angular material documentation, is that this is going to override the themes and apply what you've set here.
Okay, yeah. I
right?
think
So you've been able to change these around and see things change.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so what's happening here is you're building this thing up, and this is where everything gets kind of wired up.
Okay.
Right? What you've got here, if you look, that color primary accent, what I was thinking was primary, secondary accent worn, right? Primary, secondary accent worn. You're missing a couple, but maybe it's just this that needs replaced with this.
Right. After we access those specific colors.
Yeah, once you import this, so you've already got your primary, second accent that you want. But maybe it's these 4 lines, once you've got your importing right, that get put right here in place of those 3 lines.
Okay. Okay, that makes
I'm
sense.
guessing, but that sounds right to me.
Yeah, we can try it, because now that I know how to like do the map through the things to grab them out.
The map will help.
That's what we were confused about.
If you've never seen that before, it'll come back and get you. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the documentation is like just this file, but doesn't show you like how to actually use it in a component. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I get that too. Absolutely. Now, this is actually a case where I could be okay with taking a look at, go to ChatGPT. How do I create a custom? Don't use its answer, but maybe its answer points you at something to go, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? Ask it a few questions.
Has led me down the wrong road with this right here. So I already asked it about this, and like it kept giving me different ways to like different syntax. So and then it wasn't, I was like, well, what's the difference between this syntax and this syntax? And it was like, oh, because those are different versions syntax. And I was like, okay, well, okay.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know that I would. What you got to remember, we've all met that person that's right about everything. And they're absolutely wrong about 90% of that.
Yeah.
And that other 10%, you go to chat, because it sounds close enough that's what ChatGPT is. It's that book that's just throwing stuff out there that sounds really good, right? But can you find enough syntax stuff that might point you in a direction?
Right. Yeah.
Right. If I had gotten something like this page, and maybe this as another part of it, as I look at this, here's where I see the commonalities. I see those 4 lines, and I see those 3 lines. So those are 2 things that jumped out at me, that they're nearly identical. And I'm wondering if just a straight replacement isn't what you need. Just take that off here. I mean, you can get rid of those whole from 71 down. You can get rid of it, copy those 4 lines, and put them in here and see what happens. Would be my guess. Right?
Yeah.
And it could be just as easy. I don't know if there's a pattern, but can we look up this map define light theme and what its options are? And has anybody done anything where the color is $ map palette instead of this $ map palette?
Oh, interesting.
There you're just passing a map.
Right.
Right. I might say, if you do that, we might want to rename these.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of map palette primary, maybe it's mat dash HTTAT dash palette primary.
Right.
Throw that HTTAT in all the way through, primary color on down. All the way through. So this becomes specific for this project. It wouldn't even in theory override anything else that somebody might be using throughout all of the CSS for this project. Okay. And then you bring that over to here, and then it's very clear which one you're using something outside normal. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Those are the kind of things I would try.
Okay.
We could, in theory, take this up a notch. Could this be something where we have a root override object, a variable? We know we can use maps now, right? And so maybe you have selected, and let's take a look at their maps real quick. I want to see how they can name in their maps. We might need double quotes inside the map. Yeah, so we can use the double quotes. So if we did something like selected, and then you can use a map to reference it. I don't know that either one's wrong. No matter how much you want to play with it and how easy or challenging you want to make it for the team moving forward. This is a very easy pattern to figure out what's going on.
Right.
This one, they'd have to learn a little bit about using the map get.
Okay, yeah.
But this is probably easier to read and reason about than this is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to make those choices for you. You guys can figure that out.
Yep.
I'll probably just missing a semicolon there, I expect. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't like that. Okay.
Get from the override to select a background color. That I mean, it even sounds cool, right? And I do believe the map get has an option for. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've done it. I thought on the map get that there was another option. There was a third input on it. I could be wrong on that.
Oh yeah, map key or no? Sorry.
Well, that's the thing. I thought there was a way to do a default with it.
Okay.
Well, here's a nested. You go layers into map into map into map. So that's what the keys are doing. But I thought there was a way to put a final value that was, if you don't get anything back. But I'm not seeing that. That may have changed somewhere along the way. But SAS has capacity for ifs and that kind of stuff too, but I don't think we need to go there with that. When things start disappearing, you figure it out pretty quick, right? So any other questions? Is that enough to move you guys forward? Or
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
No, that is good for me, I think.
Clear as mud. No.
Well, I mean, realize this is probably the most painful part for me is things like in the last section we talked about, the last session, we talked about backend and building a Node Express and the auth and that kind of stuff. And I haven't done that stuff in years, and that's fresh in your guys' head. And
oh yeah.
I got to stop and let you guys actually do some of that work and not jump in and do it myself. And it's talk about frustrating. I mean, you guys are really close. I mean, I think you're right on that edge of having the answer right there.
Okay.
I'm not even 100% sure. I mean, like I said, I do this when you greenfield a project, when you start a project up, you spend like 2 weeks hammering at this until you get it working.
Yeah.
And then you take all that stuff you've done and then you clean it up because you had like 16 mistakes that you tried to do that were just utter failures and they're still floating in your code somewhere.
Right.
Right. I've been there. Okay. I might do a greenfield like that, like once every 3 years. So by the time I come back to it, I'm 2 years into a current project. That might be a year from now. Who knows what material is going to look like at that point in time?
Right. Who
knows if I'm doing it in Material Angular or React? I mean, It's different in both. It's not. It'd be really nice if they had the same in both, but it's not the same in both. So, I feel your pain and frustration, and you're right on track with probably about how long this would take me to do too. Okay, this isn't something I would have whipped out in an hour. This is something I would have been, how far can I throw the laptop on a Tuesday trying to figure it out? Right? We've all been there. Okay. So you're right on track. I don't see anything off in what you're doing. This is a tough card. Okay. What did we point that one at?
5.
Yeah, there's a reason I said 5, and I might have even thought 8 on that. And I'm glad the two of you paired on it, because that's a tough one. Okay. And everything else is pretty much dependent on that to some degree.
Oh, great. Okay.
What?
No, I'm just saying, like, then we should get it done-ish soonish, so all the other stuff can.
No.
Oh,
the other stuff is dependent on that in terms of starting to have it look like something.
Oh, I see.
We want it to look like.
Yeah.
I could care less if it's purple and red and pink for another couple of weeks.
Okay.
I'd rather get your side right and hammered out correctly first time, because that's one that, if it's hammered out right, it drives how we do those overrides and things like that. I love seeing that you thought that direction. That's what I expect to see out of devs. Truly. Okay.
I have a question too. So for instance, the assistant selection component, TS, so TypeScript, we have added the style URL for this source styles, that SCSS. Is that necessary? So the blue one, the blue TS TypeScript file.
Oh, the TypeScript file. Oh,
we have the style URLs.
We don't need it in there, right?
Oh, yeah, no, you don't need that in there. No.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
We had, that was part of our testing, we couldn't get the test to pass until we got that right. But then I was like, now that you're talking about it, it's accessible everywhere. Do we even need that? So
correct.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes.
Okay. I'm taking.
I didn't notice that was in there. You got me on that one. That was an interesting attempt. I like that though. I hadn't thought that way, but I like that.
What's that?
Bringing it in that way?
Yeah.
Oh,
we were
add style URLs.
Where do we add this? Let's add it everywhere and see if it
now
works.
that is well, that's a means I hadn't thought of. I kind of like it in a way, but my other thought would have been it might be priority as well. So if you were going to add something like that in there, I wouldn't do styles because that's global. But if you were to add something like that in there,
okay,
it might be priority. So if you need to use it in the component one, it might have to go before the component. It might be something load order, CSS files. If you load one after the other, you can get completely different answers.
Right.
Especially if they're working on the same thing.
Yeah, because if you have specific things for that component and then you override it with your global styles, it doesn't even matter that you have the specific.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the case you guys were thinking was, if I need to access a variable out of this file, if I load this one first, the variable's not there. If I load that one first, then the variable's available. Maybe.
Okay.
Got it.
But my guess is you don't need any of the imports this way or within the actual SCSS file.
Okay. That's good to know.
I could be proven wrong, but I think I'm right.
Well, at least we'll have a version that has this. We know it passed the test. And then we can always revert if we need it and switch the order. Yeah.
And the other thing you could think too is, I think this is great thinking to use the SCSS overrides, but what's wrong with using regular CSS variables? So if I did something like, isn't it dash dash?
Yeah.
And then within my code, I can use this override selected within the assistance and grade level for the foreground and background colors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I haven't used a
that's-
lot of variables, full disclosure. So
Well, I'll be honest,
That's
I
okay.
look it up every time because I always get it wrong. Custom properties, not variables. In fact, I get the name wrong. Oh, look at that. It's a dash dash. I got that part right. And notice how they do it. They tag it to the root
Okay.
so that it can be applied globally across your HTML document.
Yeah, I guess I just thought with SAS that it was customary to use the $sign for whatever reason.
It is.
So
It absolutely is, and you're right. And what I'm saying is, everything for the theming, stick to the SAS.
okay.
Do we necessarily need to use the SAS for the variables when we can use CSS for variables, essentially to get the same solution out of it?
Right.
Okay, this is going to be a global CSS file. Why make SAS build it when we can just attach it as a variable, and you actually should be able to see that variable usage? Because what that becomes then on the other side is, let's see, it was in here in the gray double. Then this would be something like var override selected, like that.
Okay.
Because it's defined in the root of the CSS, it should be accessible to every CSS file used, including the ones at the component level. That might be easier than using the CSS, the SAS to apply your variables.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
I just haven't used that yet, so I appreciate you showing us.
the CSS custom properties don't have the concept of a map. So they would have to be individually named.
Right.
But that'd be easier for other people to import than to have to map.
Oh, yes, much, much easier. And much easier to diagnose because it's going to be active within the DOM when you go to take a look at what's going on. It's not something that has to pre-compile and maybe the compiler fails.
Yeah.
If you typed your name of your variable wrong and you look in the DOM and you're like, oh, look, it's looking for this variable, but oh, there's a variable and the name's spelled differently. You can actively see that in the DOM because it is CSS. You know, the nice part is you can change them on the fly in the DOM too if you wanted to and see what happens. Like I could change the variable or I could change the implementation of the variable to another variable to check styling in the DOM on the fly while the application's running. So that might be an advantage of doing it that way over the SCSS pattern. So I think if I were inclined, that'd be the direction I'd be going.
I have one more question. So like once we get this wired up, then like in the HTML files, for instance, where they have color primary, if that color was secondary and we have that defined in our theme, then it'll show up as the secondary color, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We don't have to like say in the CSS for that specific component what that is. That it just knows because we've defined that.
It knows because of what we use here.
Yeah.
That this is actually the CSS that gets built. It's looking for that attribute.
Got it. So when
For
we get our
primary,
themes,
secondary, yeah.
we
When
can
get our
just
themes,
try.
oh,
I'm
absolutely.
sorry. We can just
No.
change that to secondary or accent or worn and then have it show up that way. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that covers things like disabled, enabled, and that too, and your hovers and your clicks and your actives and it changes a lot of CSS really fast with just a couple of lines. Yep. Cool stuff, huh?
Yeah.
You sound nervous.
No, I'm just like thinking and processing.
Okay. It is a lot to process. Absolutely. I mean, you guys are learning, literally, you're learning a whole nother layer to a language. Right?
Yeah. And like the matte raised button, like that's a specific Angular material thing that's predefined styles, but then the color is basically what we're dealing with at this point.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a matte raised button, could be a matte flat button. There's like 5 or 6 of those, I think. And then colors, there's 4 different colors you can use to customize the button itself. I mean, yeah, if you think about it, I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of CSS that gets generated to make all this work. It's really cool.
Yeah. And then, sorry, Megan, if you have questions, I'm talking.
No, you're good.
I was curious too, what kinds of colors you prefer or had in mind? Just because like the colors that we have selected now are just random. You know, we haven't really decided on anything. So I didn't know if you had a direction you wanted to go with it.
Not purple and pink. That was one of the conversations we had when we talked the images the other day on that recorded one. I think part of it is we need to decide, we need to hammer out the logo, because if we go with something like the brain that you came up with, that's got a lot of options for color in there with the purples and blues and
right.
Greens. Whereas if we go with something like the check mark, a little more limited in there. I'm not UI UX. I'm functionality. I mean, if you've watched any of my videos, you tend to see, I mean, not the recorded sessions we're doing, but any of my like training kind of videos, I tend to like the greenish colors. But I mean, this is from a dork that was in the military for 8 years. I like greens, but that doesn't mean that's what this has to be.
Right.
I mean, we want to make something that kids will be using.
Right.
I mean, probably more so than adults, and that's probably who we should lean towards to some degree.
Yeah, I've just been looking at some color theory stuff too, though. So, like, which colors like are easier on the eyes?
Yeah, that was one we didn't get back to in the class.
But I've studied some color theory, so in my degree.
That was the wrong one. It's the Adobe Color Wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have some really cool stuff out here. They changed it a little bit recently.
Cool.
The Adobe Color Wheel stuff is just stunningly easy to work with. Yeah, you pick what your primary is, and it does all these things based on these things, and you can do it RGB. You can do it in way more than I'd ever need. And I've never seen this extract a theme before, so I don't know what that does.
Have you seen that
from an image?
Have you seen the color tool within the Angular material?
No.
Because they also have something.
Oh, yeah.
I like this one just because I can like drag them and you can watch it change.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Somebody was having a heck of a day when they decided to make this. And then, I come up with horrible color schemes. You don't want my choices. I might say yes or no in what you put out, but you don't want my choices.
I'll put it in the chat if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
All right.
So this is material. Okay, let me turn off my color thing. That's going to distort everything. Whoa.
It'll take you down, I think, to the color palettes, but or the color system, yeah. And then just scroll a little bit. And then go down a little bit further. And there's like a tool for picking colors.
Way down.
Yeah. And then you can pick your primary color, and you can even pick a secondary color, but it'll give you like the complementary and triadic and.
So if I wanted like, ooh, wow.
Yeah, I was surprised to see what the complementaries were, based on certain greens and things.
Yeah. So if we want to do a secondary color, it doesn't give you anything else if you do a secondary color. You just get the primary and secondary.
Right.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
But you could stay in the triad instead of doing the complementary,
I'm gonna leave it up to you guys.
Okay.
I hate to say that.
No, that's fine.
I'll help you get it working.
Yeah. That's the thing I care about most. We can like
You
define
don't want
colors
my
later.
UI UX. I'm telling you, it's no, you don't. I have many websites that are just the ugliest things out there. Okay, but they work. I mean, they're really cool and they work really well. If we could get away with, let's be honest, the easiest is going to be if we can get away with like, hey, we like this one and this one and this one, and they're already pre-built. That makes life really easy, right? Because they're already there. We just have to grab the pieces we want. But if we want to customize our own, I'm okay with that too. However you guys want to approach it. Oh, it copies to the clipboard. Nice. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
This helped a lot.
Well, you guys are helping me a lot. I don't know. I still like the wheel. I like playing around with these things. And then the other one I have is there. I don't know if you have the Adobe, so we'll put that in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
And then the other one I've used in the past is the Peloton one. And this is an interesting one in how it puts colors together, and you can do, these kind of things as well. And you really end up with some weird stuff. And somewhere in here is a AI examples. So you can take it where it'll put those on a page. You go in light mode or dark mode. I don't know why we have this weird silhouette. I keep expecting to see a pole on the side or something there when I see that one. Really weird. I think I do have this is what the site looks like. It's another way to look at it. I go in here and poke around all the time and come up with these things, and I'm like, oh, that was really kind of cool. And then I go look at the examples. And I'm like, oh, that's horrible. So again, you don't want everything. You don't want me picking colors. That's not my forte by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Anything else?
Nope. I'm good for now.
All right. And Katie's giving a thumbs up to the stop.
Yep, I'm good.